There is a possibility so radical, so utterly contrary to the way most human beings have been taught to think about themselves, that the mind immediately resists it. The moment it is heard, the intellect begins arguing, comparing, analyzing, and attempting to fit it into old categories. Yet, if you can listen for a few moments without rushing toward agreement or disagreement, without trying to decide whether it is true or false, something extraordinary may begin opening within you. The possibility is this: perhaps the soul never enters the body, and perhaps the soul never leaves the body. Perhaps the entire question has been misunderstood from the beginning. Humanity has spent thousands of years imagining the soul as a traveler, moving from one place to another, entering at birth, departing at death, wandering through existence like a visitor passing through temporary homes. Entire religions have been built around this image. Entire philosophies have attempted to explain when the soul arrives, how the soul departs, where the soul goes afterward, and what happens during the journey. Yet, beloved ones, what if the soul is not a thing that travels at all? What if it is not an object moving through space? What if it is not something that comes and goes? What if it is more like the sky itself, and the body is simply a cloud appearing within it? The difficulty begins because the human mind understands reality through objects. It understands things. It understands movement. It understands locations. If I ask where a chair is, the mind understands. If I ask where a mountain is, the mind understands. If I ask where your body is, the mind understands. But consciousness is not an object. Awareness is not a thing. Being itself cannot be located the way a stone can be located. Yet, because language forces us into object-oriented thinking, we begin speaking about the soul as though it were a possession. We say, my soul. In the same way we say, my house, or my car, or my body. And immediately, a subtle misunderstanding is created. The soul becomes another object among objects. But the ancient mystics repeatedly pointed towards something entirely different. They suggested that what we call the soul is not something you possess. It is what you are before every possession, before every identity, before every description. It is not inside you. Rather, everything you call you appears within it. Look carefully at your experience. The body changes continuously. The child becomes the adolescent. The adolescent becomes the adult becomes the elderly person. Every cell changes, every appearance changes. The body you have now is not the body you had 10 years ago. Thoughts change as well. Opinions come and go. Beliefs transform. Desires appear and disappear. Emotions move endlessly. One day there is joy, another day there is sadness. One moment there is confidence, another moment there is uncertainty. Everything seems to flow, everything seems to move. Yet something remains strangely constant throughout all these changes. Something has been present during every experience. Something witnessed childhood. Something witnessed youth. Something is witnessing this very moment. What is that presence? What is that silent awareness that remains while everything else changes? Beloved ones, this is where the inquiry becomes profound. Most people live their entire lives identified with the changing content of consciousness, and therefore never notice the consciousness itself. They become their thoughts, they become their emotions, they become their memories, they become their successes and failures, they become their stories. And because all these things change, life feels unstable. Fear arises naturally, because whatever changes can be lost. Whatever appears can disappear. Whatever is born can die. But the mystics discovered something astonishing. They discovered that awareness itself possesses a different quality. Thoughts appear within awareness. Emotions appear within awareness. The body appears within awareness. Experiences appear within awareness. Yet, awareness itself remains untouched by the experiences passing through it. Imagine sitting beside a river. Water flows continuously. The river never stops moving. Leaves drift past. Reflections change. Currents shift. Yet, the space in which the river edges remains unchanged. The sky above the river does not become wet because water passes beneath it. In the same way, awareness remains untouched by the endless movements occurring within consciousness. Anger may arise, but awareness itself does not become angry. Fear may arise, but awareness itself does not become afraid. Pleasure may arise, but awareness itself does not become pleasure. It simply witnesses. It simply allows. It simply remains. This understanding begins transforming the entire question of life and death. If awareness is not an object, how can it enter the body? If awareness is not a thing, how can it leave the body? Entry and exit belong to objects. Arrival and departure belong to forms. The body enters existence and eventually leaves it. Thoughts enter consciousness and eventually disappear. Emotions arise and eventually dissolve. But awareness itself may not participate in these movements at all. It may be the silent background within which all movement occurs. Human beings fear death largely because they identify themselves with what changes. They identify with the body, and the body is mortal. They identify with personality, and personality is temporary. They identify with memories, and memories fade. They identify with achievements, and achievements eventually become irrelevant. Naturally, fear appears because everything identified with is vulnerable. Yet, if awareness itself is your deepest nature, then the entire perspective changes. The question is no longer whether something survives death. The question becomes whether awareness was ever born in the first place. Notice how strange this sounds to the ordinary mind. The mind immediately asks, if awareness was never born, how can it exist? But existence itself contains mysteries beyond conceptual understanding. The ocean exists before the wave appears. The wave rises, dances briefly, and disappears. Yet throughout the entire process, the ocean remains. The wave imagines itself separate and therefore fears its ending. But from the perspective of the ocean, nothing essential has happened. Form changed, water remained. Beloved ones, many spiritual traditions have used different words to describe this same insight. Some called it pure consciousness. Some called it the witness. Some called it the eternal self. Some called it Buddha nature. Some called it the kingdom within. The names differ, but the pointing remains similar. They are all directing attention away from temporary forms and toward the unchanging presence beneath them. The tragedy is that humanity has become obsessed with becoming while neglecting being. People spend decades trying to improve the personality, strengthen the identity, accumulate achievements, and secure permanence for things that are inherently impermanent. This creates enormous suffering because reality refuses to cooperate. Everything changes, everything moves, everything evolves. The ego fights this truth continuously. It wants certainty, it wants guarantees, it wants permanence, but existence offers movement instead. The wise person does not fight movement. He begins looking for that which remains present within movement itself. Meditation becomes important here. Not because meditation creates awareness, but because meditation reveals awareness. Awareness already exists. It is present before every technique, before every method, before every spiritual practice. The purpose of meditation is simply to remove distractions long enough for consciousness to recognize its own nature. When you sit silently and observe thoughts, eventually a realization emerges. Thoughts are being seen. Emotions are being seen. Sensations are being seen. Memories are being seen. But who is the seer? What is this witnessing presence that remains throughout every experience? Do not answer too quickly. The mind loves answers. It collects answers the way a miser collects coins. But this inquiry is not about intellectual conclusions. It is about direct seeing. The moment you genuinely observe the witness, something remarkable happens. Identity begins loosening. The old assumption that you are merely a body, merely a personality, merely a collection of experiences starts weakening. A larger perspective emerges. Life becomes less about protecting an image and more about discovering reality. Then death itself begins appearing differently, not as an enemy, not as a catastrophe, not as an interruption, simply as part of existence's rhythm. Day becomes night, night becomes day. Seasons change, flowers bloom and wither, stars are born and disappear. Form comes and goes continuously. Why should the body be different? The body participates in the same cosmic dance. It appears, it functions beautifully, eventually it returns to the elements from which it came. But beloved ones, awareness may not belong to the world of forms at all. Awareness may be the open space in which forms arise. Just as the screen remains while countless images appear and disappear upon it, awareness remains while experiences come and go. The movie changes, the screen remains. The dream changes, the dreamer remains. This is why awakened individuals often appear unusually relaxed in the face of mortality. Their relaxation is not based upon belief. It is not based upon hope. It is not based upon philosophical optimism. It emerges from direct observation. They have seen something within themselves that does not participate in the endless movement of becoming. They have discovered a still point within the turning world. And once this stillness is recognized, fear begins losing its foundation. Then life itself changes. Ordinary moments become luminous. The sound of rain becomes enough. A simple breath becomes enough. A sunrise becomes enough. Why? Because attention is no longer consumed entirely by future anxieties and past regrets. Awareness begins resting in itself. Existence no longer feels like a problem to solve, it becomes a mystery to experience. And perhaps this is the deepest truth hidden within all authentic spirituality. You are not moving toward your essential nature. You are already resting within it. The wave does not need to travel to the ocean, it is already ocean. The fish does not need to search for water, it already lives within it. The soul does not need to enter the body, because awareness was never separate from existence in the first place. The moment this is understood, not intellectually, but existentially, something profound relaxes within consciousness. The struggle to become somebody weakens. The fear of disappearance weakens. The obsession with control weakens. A quiet trust begins emerging. Life flows, death flows. Form appears, form disappears. Yet, beneath all movement, there remains an immeasurable stillness. And in that stillness, beloved ones, lies the mystery that sages have pointed toward for centuries. Not a doctrine, not a belief, not a theory, a living reality waiting to be discovered directly. The reality that what you truly are cannot be reduced to a body, cannot be confined to a personality, cannot be measured by achievements, and cannot be defined by time. Then the question is no longer whether the soul enters or leaves the body. The question becomes who it is that imagined separation in the first place. And when that illusion dissolves, what remains is silence, what remains is awareness, what remains is presence, what remains is the timeless reality that was here before every beginning and will remain after every ending. And in that recognition, beloved ones, there is a freedom so profound that even death loses its shadow, because you discover that the deepest part of your being was never traveling through existence at all. It was existence itself looking through your eyes. The difficulty is that language itself creates confusion. Whenever we speak, we are forced to use words that imply separation. We say the soul is inside the body, but inside and outside belong to the world of physical objects. We say consciousness occupies the body, but occupation implies distance between the occupier and the occupied. We say awareness uses the body, but this too creates an image of two separate entities interacting. Language can point toward truth, but it cannot contain truth. The mystics of every age understood this limitation. That is why they often spoke in paradoxes. They knew that literal statements would inevitably be misunderstood. When they said the soul is everywhere, they did not mean it in a geographical sense. They meant that consciousness is not confined in the way the mind imagines. It is not trapped inside skin. It is not imprisoned within bones and organs. The body appears within consciousness far more than consciousness appears within the body. This sounds strange because we have been conditioned to think the opposite. Yet, examine your own experience carefully. Everything you know about the body appears within awareness. Every sensation, every perception, every thought about the body arises within consciousness. Awareness is primary, experience is secondary. The screen remains while images move across it. The sky remains while clouds pass through it. Beloved ones, imagine standing beside a river and watching the reflections dance upon the water. The trees appear in the reflection. The sky appears in the reflection. Clouds appear in the reflection. Yet, none of these things are actually contained inside the river. They simply appear there. In a similar way, the entire world appears within consciousness. The body appears within consciousness. Thoughts appear within consciousness. Life itself appears within consciousness. But because attention becomes fascinated by appearances, it forgets the space in which appearances occur. The wave becomes so fascinated with its temporary shape that it forgets the ocean. Then fear arises. Every wave must eventually disappear. Every form must eventually dissolve. Every individual expression of life must change. Yet the ocean remains. The essence remains. The source remains. This is why awakened beings often speak about death with a tranquility that seems impossible to ordinary minds. It is not because they possess comforting beliefs. Beliefs cannot remove fear completely. It is because they have seen something directly. They have discovered through meditation that awareness exists independently of the constantly changing contents passing through it. They have watched thoughts come and go. They have watched emotions come and go. They have watched identities come and go. They have watched entire psychological worlds appear and disappear. Through this observation, they begin recognizing that what they truly are cannot be reduced to these temporary movements. A profound shift occurs. Identity moves away from form and toward awareness itself. Then death begins looking different. It no longer appears as annihilation. It appears as transformation. The form changes. The essence remains untouched. Beloved ones, consider sleep. Every night, the world you know disappears. Your daily identity disappears. Your concerns disappear. Your plans disappear. Even your sense of being a particular person becomes temporarily absent. Yet something remains. Other Otherwise, you could never awaken and say, I slept well. There is continuity beneath the changing states. Waking changes into dreaming. Dreaming changes into deep sleep. Deep sleep changes back into waking. States come and go, but the capacity for awareness remains. The mystics have often used sleep as a doorway for understanding death, because both involve the disappearance of familiar forms. Yet each morning you awaken without panic. Why? Because at some level, existence knows continuity. The fear belongs to the mind. The deeper reality remains undisturbed. The ancient obsession with whether the soul enters or leaves the body often misses the more important question entirely. The real question is not what happens after death. The real question is whether you have discovered who you are before death arrives. A person who does not know himself while alive will remain confused, regardless of whatever theories he adopts about the afterlife. Beliefs become substitutes for understanding. One person believes in heaven, another believes in reincarnation, another believes in nothingness. Yet, belief itself changes very little. The deeper inquiry is existential rather than theological. Who is the one having this experience right now? Who is aware of these thoughts? Who is aware of this body? Who is aware of this moment? If you investigate this sincerely, without rushing toward conclusions, something extraordinary begins revealing itself. You discover that awareness cannot be observed as an object, because it is the observer itself. You can observe a thought, you can observe an emotion, you can observe a sensation, but the observer remains elusive, because it is the very light through which observation occurs. The eye can see everything except itself directly. In the same way, awareness illuminates every experience while remaining beyond objectification. This is why mystics speak of it with such reverence. It cannot be grasped by the intellect, because the intellect itself appears within awareness. It cannot be possessed, because it is the source from which all possession arises. It cannot be lost, because it was never acquired. And beloved ones, once this understanding begins flowering, a tremendous relaxation enters life. The obsession with permanence weakens. The desperate struggle to secure the future weakens. The fear of change weakens. You begin realizing that life was never asking you to become immortal as an individual form. It was inviting you to discover the timeless dimension already present within experience. The river flows, seasons change, bodies age, Civilizations rise and fall. Stars are born and stars disappear. Yet existence itself remains an endless dance of transformation. To fight this dance is suffering. To understand it is wisdom. Then death is no longer viewed as an enemy. It becomes part of the same mystery that gave birth to life. The sunset is not the opposite of the sunrise. They belong to the same movement. The falling leaf is not separate from the flowering tree. They belong to the same process. Birth and death are two aspects of a single reality. The mind divides them because the mind thinks in opposites. Awareness sees the whole. Awareness recognizes that endings and beginnings are continuously interwoven. When this recognition deepens sufficiently, beloved ones, an entirely different relationship with existence becomes possible. You stop living from fear and begin living from wonder. You stop asking how to preserve every form forever and begin appreciating each form while it exists. A flower becomes more beautiful because it is temporary. A moment becomes more precious because it cannot be repeated. Life becomes richer, not poorer, when impermanence is understood deeply. Every breath becomes a gift. Every encounter becomes sacred. Every ordinary experience begins shining with quiet significance. And then, perhaps one evening while sitting silently beneath the sky, or perhaps while watching rain fall against a window, or perhaps in the middle of an entirely ordinary moment, when the mind becomes still for just an instant, you may glimpse something that no philosophy can adequately describe. You may realize directly that what you are seeking has always been present, that awareness was never born and therefore cannot die, that consciousness was never confined and therefore cannot be released, that the soul never truly entered the body and never truly leaves it, because the whole framework of entering and leaving belongs to a limited way of seeing. Then there is only existence, only awareness, only the great mystery expressing itself through countless forms. Bodies come and go, thoughts come and go, worlds come and go, but the silent witnessing presence remains, not as an individual possession, not as a personal achievement, but as the very ground of being itself. And in that recognition, beloved ones, fear begins dissolving, not because you have found an answer to every question, but because you have discovered something deeper than answers, something deeper than beliefs, something deeper than concepts. You have discovered the living reality of awareness itself, the eternal presence within which life and death appear like waves upon an infinite ocean, rising, dancing, disappearing, and yet never truly separate from the vastness that contains them all. For this reason, beloved ones, the greatest mistake a human being can make is postponing self-discovery until some imagined future. People say they will meditate later. They will explore consciousness later. They will ask deeper questions later. First, they must become successful. First, they must become secure. First, they must solve all their problems. Yet life has a peculiar habit of never becoming completely settled. One challenge is replaced by another. One responsibility gives way to the next. One desire is fulfilled and immediately another appears. The horizon keeps moving farther away. The search for the perfect moment becomes endless. Meanwhile, years pass, decades pass. The body changes quietly. Hair becomes grey. Faces become lined. Entire chapters of life disappear into memory. Then suddenly a person realizes that what he intended to do someday has remained undone. This is why the awakened ones have always emphasized the present moment, not because the future does not matter, but because reality is available only now. Awareness exists only now. Truth exists only now. The door has never been anywhere else. It has always been here. The mind dreams of tomorrow, but existence unfolds in this moment. And the one who discovers the eternal within the present discovers something that death itself cannot touch. Beloved ones, if the soul neither enters nor leaves the body, then what is birth and what is death? Birth is a form becoming visible. Death is a form becoming invisible. The essence remains untouched. Think of a clay pot. Before the pot existed, the clay existed. When the pot is broken, the clay remains. The form changes, but the substance continues. Yet even this analogy is limited, because consciousness is not a substance in the ordinary sense. It is more mysterious than any physical material. It cannot be weighed, it cannot be measured, it cannot be captured in a laboratory. The scientists can study the brain, and the brain is certainly connected with consciousness, just as a flute is connected with music. But the flute is not the music itself. Music expresses itself through the flute. In the same way, consciousness expresses itself through the body, through the nervous system, through the mind. Yet it remains something fundamentally beyond the mechanisms through which it appears. When the instrument changes, the expression changes. When the instrument disappears, the expression changes again. But the source remains inexhaustible. This understanding transforms not only your relationship with death, but also your relationship with life. Most people live in fear because they are trying to protect a false identity. They defend opinions as if their survival depends upon them. They defend beliefs as if uncertainty were a mortal threat. They defend images of themselves because they do not know who they are without those images. The result is continuous tension. Life becomes a battlefield. Every disagreement feels personal. Every criticism feels dangerous. Every change feels threatening. But when awareness begins recognizing its own nature, something softens. There is less need to defend, less need to prove, less need to conquer. You begin seeing that most conflicts arise from identification. The ego is constantly protecting its boundaries. Awareness has no boundaries to protect. The ego lives in contraction. Awareness lives in openness. This openness creates a remarkable quality of freedom. You begin participating in life fully while no longer being imprisoned by it. You love deeply, yet you do not cling. You enjoy beauty, yet you do not demand that it last forever. You engage in relationships, work, creativity, and responsibility, yet inwardly you remain connected to something deeper than all of them. This is not detachment in the cold sense. It is not indifference. It is a more profound intimacy because it is free from fear. Fear distorts love. Fear distorts perception. Fear distorts life itself. When fear weakens, a different quality emerges. Gratitude becomes natural. Wonder becomes natural. Presence becomes natural. You stop trying to possess existence and begin learning how to participate in it. Beloved ones, this is why the mystics often appear so relaxed. People mistake their relaxation for passivity, but it is not passivity, it is trust. They have stopped fighting the river. They have stopped arguing with reality. They understand that existence is infinitely larger than the individual mind. The wave does not need to control the ocean. The leaf does not need to control the tree. The star does not need to control the galaxy. Everything belongs to a vast intelligence already moving in perfect rhythm. The ego suffers because it imagines itself separate from this rhythm. It imagines that survival depends upon constant control, but control is always limited. No matter how intelligent you are, you cannot stop time. No matter how powerful you become, you cannot prevent change. No matter how wealthy you become, you cannot purchase permanence. Eventually, life teaches everyone the same lesson. Surrender is not defeat. Surrender is alignment with reality. And perhaps this is the deepest meaning hidden within the statement that the soul never enters or leaves the body. It is not merely a theory about life after death. It is an invitation to see differently right now. It is an invitation to stop identifying exclusively with temporary forms and begin recognizing the awareness in which all forms arise. It is an invitation to shift from the surface to the depth, from the wave to the ocean, from the story to the silent presence within which the story unfolds. Once this shift begins, even slightly, life acquires a new dimension. Ordinary moments become luminous. The sound of birds in the morning feels different. The movement of wind through trees feels different. Even silence feels alive. Nothing external may have changed, yet perception has changed. And when perception changes, the entire world changes with it. Then one day, beloved ones, you may discover something that all the scriptures have been trying to communicate and yet could never fully express. You may discover that what you truly are was never born. Not the personality, not the body, not the collection of memories, but the awareness beneath them all. You may discover that what you truly are cannot die, because it was never an object among other objects. It was never a thing in the world. It was the space within which the world appears. It was the light by which every experience became known. It was the silent witness present before the first thought and after the last thought. And in that realization, fear begins dissolving like mist beneath the morning sun. Not because you have adopted a comforting belief, but because you have seen directly. The search ends where it began. The seeker discovers that what he sought was the very essence of his own being. The traveler discovers that the destination was hidden within every step. The one searching for the soul discovers that the soul was never absent. When life becomes a celebration rather than a problem to solve. Birth is celebrated. Death is respected. Change is welcomed. Mystery is embraced. The need for absolute certainty disappears, because existence itself becomes enough. You do not need every question answered. You do not need every mystery explained. You do not need every fear eliminated. You have touched something deeper than certainty. You have touched awareness itself. And there, beloved ones, beyond theories and beliefs, beyond doctrines and philosophies, beyond arguments about what happens before birth or after death, there is only this silent, living presence, endlessly awake, endlessly vast, endlessly free. Forms arise within it and disappear within it. Worlds emerge within it and dissolve within it. Bodies come and go. Names come and go. Stories come and go. But awareness remains. like an infinite sky, untouched by the clouds that drift across it. And when this is understood, not intellectually but existentially, not as an idea but as a direct experience, then a profound peace enters the heart. You no longer fear the end, because you have discovered that what is real has no end. You no longer cling desperately to beginnings, because you have discovered that what is real has no beginning. There is only the eternal movement of existence, expressing itself through countless forms. And behind every form, within every form, beyond every form, the same silent mystery shines. That mystery is what the sages have called the soul. Not something that enters, not something that leaves, but the eternal presence that was always here, is here now, and will remain when every form has returned to silence. And to awaken to that presence, beloved ones, is the deepest truth a human being can discover.